Hi everybody, good afternoon. It's Saturday. It's a Saturday, the 23rd of January. Welcome to Spiritual Judo for a Sustainable Jesus. I'm your host, Mark Collenberg Montero, and this is Tribolistas, Brazilian band with, or a joint venture between three Brazilian musicians, Marisa Monte and others. Thank you. Beautiful stuff, fun stuff, cool stuff. And so, hi. How are you doing out there in TV land? I'm your host for another session of Spiritual Judo for a Sustainable Jesus. My computer is down, so I am working with a tablet. And today's theme is about the clarity, or is pretty close to a subject. Well, at any rate, this is an opportunity in which this subject really starts to get at the insights that I'm starting to congeal and crystallize around key innovative concepts, basically, that are becoming a kind of system that I'm going to start advancing that has to do with sustainability and the sustainable Jesus. Okay, working with this tablet here. Let's see. Trying to get where I was, and it has just deviated again. All right, sorry about that delay, but yes, there it is. It's a recent search, so that helps that. There we go. So the phrase for today is: we cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. Posted by someone in a group that I'm part of. Now, as by way of introduction, then, briefly, my three basic ideas are the following. One, right? How are we going to get to sustainability? How are we going to deal with a culture in which the focus is on presidential elections, federal elections, government elections, when one of the key acts that affected and influenced this recent election of Joe Biden and the defeat of Donald Trump was Stacey Abrams in Georgia organizing the grassroots. A wonderful example of the political level of that kind of organizing. And so my system then includes the following. First of all, spiritual modernization. Modern American culture, modern Western civilization, the UN human rights community is fundamentally integrated, an integral part of Jesus' legacy. Here I am, the atheist at 16 who became an interfaith seeker, choosing Taoism because of an interfaith Christian scholar, Huston Smith's presentation of Taoism, and then sort of progressing over time to become an interfaith Christian with lots of, intellectual help, particularly from Unitarian Universalism, not so much spiritual help. Although, ironically, the term spiritual path that I was able to draw from was from Unitarian Universalism. So spiritual modernization, first key. Second key, more or less as part of that, is loving Jesus's full and integral and reintegrated legacy. In order to understand and effectively complete this spiritual modernization, we need to understand the relationship to Jesus, that Jesus was not a fundamentalist, that the spirit of pluralism is the love for thy neighbor as for ourselves. For our neighbors is for ourselves. And that human rights comes from that, civil rights comes from that, the university-based system comes from that. And fundamentally, number three, we need to address socioeconomic inequality, with that being a fundamental issue that drives violence. Right? Richard Wilkinson's work is excellent in that respect, highlighting on an international basis that kind of dynamic, that socioeconomic inequality drives violence, all kinds of forms of violence, not just racism, domestic abuse, child abuse, mass murders in the U.S., and then of course racism and others. So that said, dealing with okay, that was good. We cannot become what we want by remaining what we are. So let me go to my reflection here. Spiritual practice makes a fundamental difference. We cannot become what we want without becoming what we are. So that immediately, as I looked at this formulation, I'm used to the other spiritual formulation, which is we cannot become what we are without, if we remain who we want to be, without giving up what we want. You know, that's my kind of inclination. But materialistically, so this would make sense materialistically. We cannot become what we want if we remain who we are. So materialistically, I like the example of, Alan Watts actually is kind of a little bit of a sad example. For all the good parts, that, Alan Watts was this amazing explorer, spiritual explorer in many respects. He wrote a book on Zen after becoming an Anglican minister, or a dissident, or a renegade, or after leaving the Anglican ministry already right out of graduate school, and writing a book on Zen Buddhism, and then later doing Tai Chi and writing about Taoism, which was basically the first book that I read, or I tried to read about him. But and that's a key point. I never could quite stick with his material because he was quite hyper-intellectual, and so it wasn't exactly speaking to me at important levels. And so Alan Watts then, and then doing an analysis of his life, this wonderful man and his wonderful efforts, based in San Francisco as he became, nevertheless, he apparently died as an alcoholic and of stress, a stress disease, of, I think, a heart condition. So, and fairly young, 58 years old. So he, as a British guy, what strikes me is that British culture certainly can embody and seems to certainly embodies intellectual achievement and accomplishment over history and over modern history, and that may have been a conceit that kind of became a point and a barrier in his path. Sorry to say. So then Gandhi, by in a sense contrast, that Gandhi wanted to become a lawyer. And he was in South Africa then as a result of his efforts. But he faced the discriminatory circumstances there, of course, under apartheid with not just the African community, but also with the Indian community there. And his efforts began as an activist, shifting his legal knowledge and legal training, use of that, with then a what is it then? It's the sociology of social movements. He entered into a social movement, and his spiritual preparation, his spiritual side then became a fundamental resource for him, right? He had been introduced to Hinduism, reintroduced to Hinduism in London as a law student by the Blavatsky Theosophists, and I believe it was there that he studied Jesus for the first time, and then advanced from there, studying also some of the dissidents like Thoreau, Christian dissidents, a term also, an approach and a viewpoint that I like to advance in this subject of loving Jesus' full legacy. So there Gandhi was, really enriching his spiritual perspective, strengthening it, enriching it, as he then shifted who he was, and what he wanted then shifted from his own personal ambitions as a lawyer to then his new identity as an effective leader, which was inextricably linked, which emerged from his spiritual values, his psycho-spiritual values, his ethical principles and moral principles, reflecting his interfaith Christian Hindu, right, with his legal education. That is a Christian heritage and a Christian cultural heritage and series of principles. So, right, so that was then Gandhi becoming not what he wanted so much as what he wanted, meaning being the independence, the rights for his people and all people in South Africa, and then the rights of independence and a nonviolent movement for independence, to demonstrate and to utilize these nonviolent principles of the spiritual leaders, became what he wanted, right? And so did he become what he wanted? Well, right, the spiritual side then shifts that, and he became what he was, who he was, became the expression of what he wanted, rather than the other way around in the material sense. So let's leave it at that for now. Thanks for stopping by. And at Spiritual Judo for the Sustainable Jesus, for Us Sustainable Jesus. My name is Mark Collenberg Montero, your host, and we'll see you next time. As we have Chivalistas closing things out. Take care of yourself in the ongoing COVID pandemic, wherever you are. And we can be thankful that the United States has a new president, Joseph Biden, and let's keep up the grassroots organizing. And remember to buy organic and fair trade as much as you can, if possible, once a month, at least, if possible. Look into food co-ops and credit unions, and keep your spiritual life alive and well. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by. Take care. Bye-bye.